when my sister was going through her cancer, and I see her call, and I see her number on the work phone or something, and I pick up, my initial reaction every once in a while, right after I said, "Hey, how's it going, June?" I'd go, "Ugh, she's dying of cancer. How do you think it's going?" Don't ask the question, "How's it going?"
Hello, and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. Each week, my guest and I share our vulnerable behind the scenes stories of giving ourselves permission to take off our masks, let go of expectations, and embrace our own path of freedom and authentic connection. I am your host, Bianca Hughes, a lover of authenticity. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Hughes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is episode 72 of the podcast, and I'm so thankful that you are here on the podcast. And I have a guest today on the podcast, and we're talking about a topic that I believe all of us have been impacted in some way, whether it's ourselves personally, a family member or friend. But before we get into our topic, let's go ahead and let's learn about our guest. My guest today is David Richman. David is an author, public speaker, philanthropist, and endurance athlete whose mission is to form meaningful human connections through storytelling. His first book, Winning in the Middle of the Pack, discussed how to get more out of ourselves than ever imagined. With Cycle of Lives, David shares the interconnected stories of people overcoming trauma and delves deeply into the emotional journeys with cancer. He continues to do Ironman triathlons and a wide range of endurance athletic events, having recently completed a solo 4,700-mile bike ride. He is married, lives in Southern Nevada, and has twins who are in college. So let's go ahead and get into the conversation. So, David, it's so good to talk to you, and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast.
Thank you, Bianca. I'm very excited. It is a Wednesday, and here we are talking.
I
I'm very
know,
excited.
I
Thank you.
know. So tell me, favorite question, what does authenticity mean to you?
So I think authenticity is knowing when something's real, right? It's authentic. And I guess with like pieces of art or a coin or some collectible, we have ways to test that. I think with humans, we don't. So I guess authenticity to me would be being truly heart-centered, grounded, connected, leaning in, um, being a good listener, and trying to be as true to who you are when you're engaging with other people as you know how to be, and just being real, being able to be real.
I love that. I've heard this word a lot lately. Heart-centered.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you? I've been hearing a lot about it.
It's a word that's come into my world recently as well. And I belong to a men's group that is a bunch of entrepreneurs and entertainment people and coaches and things like that. And they say they're a group of heart-centered men. And so we have the same that same thought that's come through. And I think heart-centered means it's not like you don't go, "Hey, I love you, bro," right? Because "I love you, bro," or "I love you, guy," or whatever is like, that's not being heart-centered. That's saying something because you want to say it. When you look at somebody and go, "I love you. I love what you bring to me. I love what you're doing. I appreciate who you are." I think being heart-centered is what you were just asking before, is what is authenticity. Being heart-centered means being real, like relying on what's inside of you, and not saying things, doing things because that's what you have to do, or the way you think people want to perceive you, or whatever. It's just being heart-centered. Like let's be real. Let's let's make it real.
Oh. So have you always been authentic?
Uh, yes, in a certain way, and no in other ways.
Tell us more about that.
So, um, I think yeah, I came to a realization about maybe like 15 years ago that I did things for other people. And I, I was always a really hard worker. I always tried to be a good friend. I mean, it wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I think like that I was so intent on doing things because that's the way I thought I should do them, or I thought that people around me wanted me to. Here's what I need to do to be a better kid. Here's what I need to do to be a better employee or a better manager or a better parent. And I kind of always came from the perspective of what I thought other people wanted from me. That's not real authentic because I wasn't doing what made me happy. Maybe I was, but I wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't from me for me. It wasn't authentically. It's kind of like cooking dinner. Like if you say I have to cook my kids dinner, that's not being authentic. How about you get to cook your kids dinner? How about you do
Mm.
that because you want to do it? That's authenticity, right? If you don't want to do it, don't do it because you think you have to, or get them to cook or go get some to go food or takeaway or whatever, right? That's authentic, right? My wife's very, very direct, very authentic. I love that about her, but it's a little bit like, oh my gosh, if she tastes something and she doesn't like it, she goes, oh, I don't like that. Meanwhile, I might have said, oh, somebody spent the time to cook that. I better not say I don't like it because they probably don't want to hear that. And so, oh yeah, it is pretty good. I'm not being authentic.
I love that.
I'm
That's such a
not being
great
authentic.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being
Wow.
authentic would be saying like, I gotta tell you, it's not the best thing I ever had, but I really appreciate you trying. Here's how I think I could make it better. you know?
So, how did you begin to change, or what was there something that propelled you to change to become
Yes.
more authentic? What was that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of a lightning bolt thing. I was in a very unhealthy, abusive relationship. I had young twins at the time. They were 4 years old, and I had uh, was working really, really hard, kind of quote unquote for the man, right? I was on Wall Street working for a company, doing this crazy grind of where nothing was about you; it was all about the company. Um, and I was trying to navigate a very unhealthy relationship, and also just found out the news that my sister had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer,
Hmm.
and I just said, geez, man, like literally, who are you and what do you want to do? And I, I, I got out of that relationship, took my kids with me. Kind of just stood in front of the mirror, Bianca, literally one day, and just said, dude, who are you? Who do you want to be? Like, do you really want to be a overweight smoker, not athletic, always doing things for other people? And it's okay to do things for other people, like be unselfish, but I mean, like, don't you want to like get out of life what you want out of life, even if that's doing things for other people, being a better parent or whatever.
Hmm.
um, and I literally had that kind of like lightning moment where I just said, you got to put yourself first. And I never ever did that. I was, you know give me a gift, no way. Like, I'll give 100 gifts, don't give me one, right? Because I don't
Wow.
want the attention on me, right? And I always do stuff to make everybody else happy, but you want to do something to make me happy, I'll never let you, right? So I just had this moment that said, no, let's turn that around, let's turn that equation around.
Love that. So, of course, that was the look in the mirror,
Yeah.
but that was the beginning. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love to say that authenticity is a journey.
Oh yeah.
Tell us, I know one of the big things was your sister,
Hmm.
and having brain cancer and eventually losing her life
Hmm.
to brain cancer.
Yeah.
Was that also a big part of you, like you kind of mentioned, but really helping you connect to your authentic self in that
Yeah.
experience as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can like people. I mean, you're a professional in this field. You know, some people will turn away from difficult situations, and some people will lean into them.
Mm-hmm.
I had always figured that the way that I get away from a problem is to dig myself a really deep hole. So, or to get away from something that would make me grow or make me become authentic or just uh, anything that was positive, anything that would be transformative. I would escape that by digging a hole and figuring out how to get out of it. Take
Mm.
another job, create a problem, do whatever. And when I stopped kind of sabotaging myself and keeping myself so busy that I wouldn't focus on the important things, then I could then focus on the important things. And, um, you know, seeing what my sister was going through and finally owning, um, doing things for myself and trying to become a better me, which took a long time to do because I was a wreck. Um, uh, was definitely a journey, but that's, that was all part of it, and certainly what June went through was a catalyst for that as well.
Wow. So you have that that's a lot. So
Hmm.
I just want people to know, like, he's talking, but all I can think of is transition after transition. You get out of this relationship, you did this unhealthy marriage. You take
Yep.
your kids, and now you have your kids. So that's two kids. So you're a single parent, or were you co-parenting?
Well, we co-parenting, but I was really the major
The main.
caregiver,
Okay.
driver, coordinator,
Okay.
safe
And you
place, the whole
and
thing.
then you're still working on Wall Street, and
Yep.
um then of course now you're deciding to change yourself. You're recognizing, looking in the mirror and discovering who you are.
Yes.
And then also now your sister has brain cancer
Hmm.
and then eventually passes away. Like, that is a lot of transitions.
It is.
And I can think about a lot of emotional
Hmm.
turmoil. And that's the part that we don't always talk about. So, what was that like?
Yeah.
Like that
Well,
pain that when you're like, I want to run.
yep. Well, you're so right, and that's exactly the impetus for this book was that people don't talk about the emotional stress. So let me tell you a story. So June was it was about 4 years into her brain cancer. She was right near the end, and there was a 24-hour relay for life going on. And she said, "Hey, I want to make it to this relay for life so I can watch the people walk around the track for 24 hours and root me on and be there to support me." And I was so taken by that. I had already started my athletic journey, and I said I was at the point where I felt like I could run the whole 24 hours on the track if she was going to be there to watch. So I said, I'll run the
Mm.
whole 24 hours. You stay there and watch. Unfortunately, she died a couple of days before the event, so she didn't get
Wow.
to see it, right? Which is very tragic for her and all the people that were supporting her, her family, and everything. But I still went out there and I did it. And
Hmm.
my kids were with me and they witnessed it and the whole thing. We had some friends out there. It was a very moving day. But I noticed, Bianca, that that's exactly what um, was at the root of everybody's trauma was that they didn't know how to talk about or process the emotional side of it. Like
Hmm.
they could talk about how to get better care, how to deal with the kids, how to support a friend, to bring over a pie. They could talk about these kind of things, but they couldn't talk about the emotional side of it. And I thought to myself, that is a very interesting topic to try to deal with. How can we equip people to better talk about the emotional side of their cancer journey, patient, caregiver, loved one, professional like you, somebody like, how can we get them to better equip them to deal with the emotional side of that, kind of in relation to all the traumas that we all have,
Mm.
abandonment, abuse, isolation,
Right.
drug addiction, whatever. How do those things limit us or prevent us even from dealing with the emotional side of trauma and especially the trauma of cancer? And that exactly what you said was the impetus for the book.
Wow. And so, what is the emotional for you? And then I'm sure, like, what is the emotional side of trauma personally for you
Right.
before we get
So
into the other people?
yeah, so I kind of think that we're motivated, we're connected rather by two things, Bianca. I think we're connected by stories as
Mhm.
human beings, and I think we're connected by emotions, right? If you're with somebody that you like, admire, enjoy being around, and they go, and you ask them a question and they go, let me tell you a story. What do? You lean in because you want to hear the
Mhm.
story, right? So I think we're connected by stories, and I think we're connected by emotion. Like, for example, if I were to say to any listener out there, you, me, whatever, we're going to accidentally fall out of a boat and be trapped under the water. There's nobody that wouldn't experience fear of death, right? I'm afraid to die, right?
Mhm.
Fear is an emotion that we
Mhm.
all have in common. We might not respond to all stimuli the same way, but with the same emotional responses, but we all have the same emotion. And I feel like the emotion of trauma is different for everybody. And at sometimes you might feel angry. Maybe you're going to feel desperate. Maybe you're going to feel a gratitude. There could be a
Mm.
number of things that you feel in relation to your trauma, or the trauma that you see others going through. And what I think it's important to understand is, what are the triggers that cause people to have an emotional response? Usually it's the traumas in their life, in
Mhm.
their past life, that if we can connect with them, what you said earlier, in a heart-centered, authentic way, about what those triggers were, things they might have gone through, things they might be going through, then we connect on a more emotional level. For me, super long answer to your question. For me, the trauma of losing my sister, and I didn't recognize the emotional response until years later, was isolation, because she was the only one that knew about the kind of screwed up childhood we had. And
Mm.
I lost the one person that understood me that way. Do you know? And so it was very isolating. And so losing her was not just that losing somebody you care about, but it was also like, oh my God, I'm really out here alone, right? Because nobody knows the emotional issues of my childhood. No way. She did, but nobody else does.
Wow.
It's definitely isolating.
Wow. Oh, I'm getting teary thinking
Ah,
about. I'm getting teary thinking about that because to have someone to understand the power of being understood and seen. Well, should I say not even understood, but seen and
yeah,
known? It's so powerful. And when that person is not there, it is traumatic.
yeah,
Death is traumatic. So it's what we kind of call that kind of complex trauma.
yeah.
Yeah, I felt that isolation.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my wife's an attorney. She's been involved in a mentoring group. They mentor inner city youth, and they
Hmm.
have a saying there. A lot of your listeners, you might know, it's called "Salbona," and it means "I see you," right?
Mm.
Because that's I think when you are your authentic self and somebody else is their authentic self with you, you see each other on a different level, and you are safe to be yourself, right? And they're safe to be themselves. And I think that's all we ever really want, is to be safe. And if we are safe and we can connect in a real meaningful I see you way,
Hmm.
I mean, that's a beautiful part of life. That's a really beautiful part of life.
It is. It
Mhm.
is. Is that it kind of reminds me, is that what happened when you were on your journey of writing this book to speak
Mhm.
to other people with who had experienced the emotional toll of
Yeah.
cancer? Was it that I see you, I'm leaning in, that
Mhm.
kind of helped you and propelled you to write this book, would you say?
Yeah, for sure, is exactly that. And it wasn't easy, right? You can't, not just, first of all, I can't hear everybody, because maybe I have some channels that are tuned out, and people can't always want me to hear them because they have some channels that are tuned out. But it took me a while, but I wanted to find a very diverse range of people, you know, age, backgrounds. Did they encounter cancer when they were young or old? As a professional, as a caregiver, did they grow up to be an oncologist? When, like, Did they have cancer one time? Did they have cancer 5 times? Was it, did they have what range of emotions in relation to the trauma? I wanted this diverse range of characteristics so that I could have these crazy, evocative, inspiring people. And then I had to form a relationship with them. And I had to say to them, listen, Bianca, I, I think your story needs to be told. And they would all go, oh, my story's not interesting, but when you know. And then I say, I have to be prepared to ask you anything. And if it's an area we can't go in, then and it's important, then we can't work together on this project, because we have to talk about very, very serious, important, transformative points in your life, because we want to help people.
Mm.
Right? We want to help people. So an example would be, um, like, for example, Terry. So Terry, 2 different times, she gets abandoned going in for um, uh, bone marrow transplant. Twice, she got 2 bone marrow transplants. Both times, she got abandoned, literally right before or during the process by her
Mm.
loved one. Like, I can't handle this. You're on your own. Okay. Then she's part of a support group, and with her particular type of cancer, she's the only one to survive her support group. Everybody else dies. Okay. Her family doesn't really know how to deal with this stuff. They kind of put her off on an island. So here's this woman that has been abandoned. She's been isolated. She's been left alone how many countless ways. But until we understand those things about her, we wouldn't believe, unless we heard her story, how hopeful she was that she would find out what it all meant, how hopeful she was that she would connect with somebody that would ultimately get her, that would ultimately, be with her, how hopeful she was that she just wanted to wake up the next day to see what it would bring. And it sounds trite, those things, to me at least, unless we understand in relation to the really difficult things that she went through, um, how meaningful that is. So when you say to somebody, hey, listen, I think maybe tomorrow could be a better day, that you now can authentically say that, because you're going to listen to maybe some of the things in them that are causing them to not believe that.
Mm.
And if we can connect with people on that level, I think then we can help them along their journey, help ourselves along our journeys. So yeah, connecting with people, I saw again for the long answer, but connecting with people and really getting deep into their stories and talking about these transformative, traumatic experiences, and then relate that to the trauma of cancer, was kind of the germane to the whole project.
Wow. It reminds me, the whole thing of the purpose, one of the purposes of the podcast is to share those stories so that people
Mhm.
know they're not alone.
Yeah,
And when people listen, they're just so inspired and
yeah.
given a different viewpoint. Do you feel like doing the book and connecting with these people also helped you in the process to deal with some of your own things that you were going through, do you think?
I do, maybe not directly. It wasn't like a light bulb went off when somebody
Okay.
told me something and I said, "Oh yeah, I get it." But e- each each person um, very clearly told me that they talked to me about things that they hadn't talked to anybody about.
Mm.
Okay, or that they were forced through this process to examine things that they hadn't examined before. So because of that, they took steps forward along their journey of discovery, transformation, enlightenment, whatever. And I was there next to them doing that. So that helped me with my own issues, because I could see what they were going through. And because I'm connected to them on a very personal level, even if only for, you know, 2 dozen conversations or a year or two or whatever, many of the people turned into friends, but even if I only connected them for that little bit, I was witness to some transformation, some evolution, some aha moments for them, um, where then I could then apply that to my own. situation and learn from what they were going through, for sure.
Well, wow. What are some of your biggest discoveries, do you think, for yourself personally?
For myself personally, it was to gain a little bit more perspective. Um, right. I know we all say this, and I don't know how to put this, but you know how like we're always like, oh, I'm so busy, or this is so hard, or this is so difficult. It's easy to say, well, it's really not compared to what other people are going through, but I think that's an easy out. When you really see how hard people sometimes have it, and they are in a more positive place than you,
Mm,
more optimistic or more hopeful or less burdened even than you go, whoa, okay, I gotta calm my stuff down, man. I gotta like get some perspective, right? I gotta chill out. An example of that is one of the book participants who's become a very good friend was dealing with some abandonment issues during his care, and it caused him to be very macho about it. I don't need anybody taking me to chemo. I don't want anybody driving me home. He never called in sick. It was like, he just pretended like he's this big macho guy and he's not going to rely on anybody. Well, why did he not rely on anybody? Because not only did he get abandoned during his care, but he got abandoned by his mom. He walked in on his mom killing herself when he was a little boy.
oh, wow.
Talk about abandonment. So
Yeah.
here's a guy who leaves his job to go work for the cancer center that took care of him. He gives back to the Latino community to try to convince them to deal with early screening. He does all of this wonderful stuff in the community. He's super optimistic. He's super grateful for his life. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, man. When I say I don't have any problems, trust me, compared to him, I don't have any problems. Right.
Mm,
Now, he would look at me and go, dude, I got it easy compared to you. But we could do that, right, with everybody. But I think one of the benefits to me was gaining a little bit more perspective and um, allowing myself to realize that pain is pain and it can hurt. And maybe sometimes I should not make a big deal out of things that I'm making a big deal out of. Or it's
mm,
okay to make a big deal out of things I'm not making a big deal out of,
mm.
you know?
Two different perspectives. I love
Yeah, for
that.
sure. Like that example of allowing people to do something for you. I would
Mm,
never do that, right?
okay.
Difficult for me to accept help, right? I would much rather cook 100 meals for you than to sit back and relax while you cook me one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard for me to go, oh, you really want to do it? I feel guilty, uh, you know, uh, right? But that's a big deal. I got to sit back and go, no, it's important. People want to care for you. Let them,
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
It sounds like there's a lot of what I'm learning, I'm hearing is this common theme of like loneliness and abandonment
Mhm.
when it comes to cancer, which is interesting and surprising, especially in this sense of course, the abandonment and lonely because maybe you're the only person going through this, or people are not supportive, or
Mhm.
you don't have a support system, or you know you're not gonna people are not gonna be around from all sides, from the
Yeah.
caregivers, from the patient,
Yep.
or from the medical professionals, which I personally, I haven't had that close. I've had it, know people who've had it, but not had that close of experience of cancer.
Sure.
So I'm learning myself how all those emotions surrounding it and what really occurs.
It does, and it is very isolating. I serve on the board of an organization that caters to the AYA community, cancer community, and isolation is the number one issue that they have to deal with because, you know, you talk to any AYA person who's going through cancer, and they'll tell you they walk into the cancer ward, and everybody's super young or super old. There's nobody their age there. They're the only ones. Very isolating. And then also your friends are going off to college or having kids and dealing with those kind of things where you can't deal with those things or you might not ever be able to deal with it. It's a very isolating disease. And then because it's so emotional, this getting cancer, being afraid of cancer. Is it going to kill me? Is it not going to kill me? All of these crazy emotions over it. We tend to back away from it. Like people go, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then they walk away because they don't know what to say. Right?
Mm.
One of the book participants, his name is Bobby. He had a great story. His story is very inspiring. Self-sabotaging guy, ruined every relationship he ever had. Was a real jerk. Finally meets somebody who is just an angel that takes care of, teaches him how to be a decent human being and how to love himself and love somebody else. Whatever. She gets cancer right after they meet. 2 years later, they get married, and she dies right away from the
Wow.
cancer. Um, and his story is about how did he find love after that? How could he love somebody and find love after, right? This is a guy who definitely did not isolate, right? He learned a lot through his process, and I won't go into all the things, but the important thing about that story is that he was telling me a story about his dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, my dad's best friend that he known since he was a kid, that friend's wife had recently passed away from cancer, and he said, I called my dad and I said, "Hey, how's so and so doing?" And my dad's like, "I don't know. I don't know." And he goes, "What do you mean you don't know? You talk to him all the time." He goes, "Yeah, but his wife just died. What am I going to say to him? I can't call him."
Mm.
Me, right? Bobby goes, "Pick up the phone, call him, ask him about his sports team, talk about the weather, ask him if he needs anything for dinner, ask him what's going on in his life." But I mean, you've been talking to this guy for decades every day, and now you're going to go weeks and not talk to him. So cancer is a very isolating thing because people
Wow.
just don't know what to say,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, it is. It is hard. I think there's even times because in my job, there are moments where you literally have to sit in silence and you just literally have to be there because you cannot fix. A person is in emotional pain, and there are times I don't know what to say.
Right, right,
But I
right.
always tell people sometimes it's just like, you know what? I don't know what to say. What do you need? Because
Yeah,
I have no clue. But what do you need? Do you need me to sit here? Do you need me to go away? Like, what do you need? Because I don't know
that's
what
a
to say.
great way to do it because it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there in such a way, right? Oftentimes, like let's just say, for example, you're at work and somebody's looking a little down, and you go, "Hey, what's going on?" And they go, "Oh, well, I don't know." And you go, "No, no, no, what's going on?" And they go, "Oh, I just found out, my husband's friend, their daughter just got cancer. I don't know what to say to him." And you go, "Yeah, geez, that's tough, man. I'm so sorry to hear that." And then you walk away going, "Oh, why did I have to ask him what's wrong? Because I don't know what the hell to
Mm,
say." You know. Meanwhile, if you could have just said, you could lean in and you could go, "I know it's gonna sound stupid, but I don't know what to say. I mean, should I talk to you? Should I not talk to you? Do you want to unload on me? Because I'd love to be there if you want me to, but don't feel like you have to." Right? I used to when my sister was going through her cancer, and I see her call, and I see her number on the work phone or something, and I pick up. My initial reaction every once in a while, right after I said, "Hey, how's it going, June?" I'd go, "Ugh, she's dying of cancer. How do you think it's going? Don't ask the question, how's it going?" But a
mm,
couple of times of doing that, she could sense my hesitation. I'd say, "How's it going?" And she'd go, "Oh, I'm great, man. Everything's good." Or, "I'm not feeling that good today, but whatever. I didn't call you about that. Let's talk about this." But we all oftentimes, and reasonably enough, don't want to don't want to say, "I don't know." Don't want to say, "What the hell do you need?" We just don't know what to say. So it's
mm,
um it's so important for what you do to be able to be safe enough to say, "I'm not here to fix you, but I'm trying to be here to help you.
mhm.
What do you need? How can I
Yeah.
help you?" That's a really, really powerful thing to do.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, you have one concept that I want to ask you about really quickly.
Yeah.
Because you have another book, that you also wrote as well,
Mhm.
and you have a concept. Did I write this down? I'm looking at my handwriting.
Winning in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what does middle of the pack mean? That's the concept, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is the
Looking at my
concept of it.
handwriting, I'm like, you did not write
What
this
did I
right.
write down? No, I appreciate that. So here's where that came from, and it all came from that looking in the mirror that day and going literally like, who do you want to be? Because I had felt like I had done things for other people. So let's take two ends of the spectrum, Bianca. At the one end of the spectrum, you got your Oprah Winfrey's and your Michael Jordans. Um, you have Elon Musk. You have these people that are just unbelievably successful, and nobody can tell them what to do. They do whatever they do for themselves. They could care less what anybody else thinks. It's all about them.
Hmm.
Good thing, because look at what they bring to us by having been so accomplished. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got your like 30-year-old college graduate that's playing video games in their parents' basement and won't do anything, right? They're completely the opposite of the Oprah Winfrey's of the world, because they're 100% unmotivated, and
Hmm.
they don't listen to what anybody says. They do everything for themselves. They don't care about making other people happy. And I think all the rest of us, somewhere along the spectrum of in the middle of those things, we aren't trained to do things for ourselves. We're trained to do things to be a better student, to be a better therapist, to be a better writer, to be a better parent, to be a better friend, because that's what we think we should do. And this middle of the pack concept goes, well, if Oprah Winfrey were to enter a marathon, all cameras would be on her. And if your loser grandson, who never did a thing in his life, all of a sudden said, I'm going to get healthy and I'm going to go run a marathon and I'm going to make I was addicted to drugs and I was a loser. And somebody gets a hold of that story, everybody's going to be watching them to see if they finish
Hmm.
that marathon, right? Everybody else, nobody cares about. I'm in that group where nobody cares. Nobody cares if I finish or not. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's an empowering thing. If I'm going to do it, I might as well do it for myself,
Wow.
right? Don't do it for other people. So in the middle of the pack, I feel like nobody's watching, nobody cares. You do things for you. Like, if it's important for you, do it. If it's not, don't. Because in the end, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. I don't see Michael Jordan wondering what other people think about what he does or doesn't do.
Mm.
I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't see Ellen DeGeneres doing that, right? They do things because that's who they are and they do it for themselves. And I very much admire that. So I said, in the middle of the pack where nobody's really watching and nobody cares what you do or how you finish, that's where we need to, like, the beauty of it is it could be all about what we want to accomplish and what we care about ourselves and the person we want to be, right? And so that brings us back to that authentic self. If you're doing things for you, even if that's doing things for other people, volunteering, being a therapist, whatever, even if you're helping people, but it's something that you really want to do for you,
Hmm.
then just who cares what anybody else thinks? Just go
Mm.
do it. When I was an overweight smoker and never did anything in my life, I was so afraid to tell somebody I was going to go do an Ironman. An Ironman triathlon. This is a
Yeah.
12-hour endurance event. And why? Because I thought to myself, they're going to think I'm an idiot, right? What? Oh, they're going to say, oh, you're this overweight, old guy that smoked and can't. They're going to. Meanwhile, why do I care? If I want to do it, I should do it. And if it's something that's important to me, then I should do it. So I like living in that middle of the pack where nobody cares, nobody's watching. It's all about what I care about.
I love that. That's so freeing, like you said, and
Yeah.
so authentic.
Hmm.
Um and I love also what you said, kind of like helping people be free to be extraordinary for yourself,
Yes, for
not
yourself.
necessarily to have the accolades and what other people want. But that is really hard though.
It's
Um
hard.
because it's like, well, how do I know? Like, you one of the when I think about things I want to do, is having this conversation with someone, and we was talking about perfectionism, which is what I work with, and I was like, I'm writing this journal and I just don't know. And I have all these questions. And I was like, and then someone's telling me about research and I'm not a researcher. And I was like, you know what? I know what I know. I might not have a paper that's
Right.
written and researched and all these things,
Right.
but
Right.
I know what I know when people sit in this room with me and I know what I see. The only difference between me and that paper is they haven't published. They're published and I'm
And
unpublished.
I'm not right.
And it's you really have to have these conversations with
Right.
yourself to be okay without having a measurement or
Yep.
what else,
Right.
how is someone going to grade you, you know?
Yeah, but how much more authentic and how much more beautiful is it that you are sitting there saying, I'm not going to be a better therapist because that's what my patient needs. I'm going to be a better therapist because I'm a very good therapist. I want to be the best me that I could be, right? That's a very different thing, right?
Mm,
If you're writing in your journal and you're learning and you're doing all of these things because that's who you want to be, who the heck matters? It doesn't, nothing else matters, right?
mhm,
Nothing, it doesn't make you a better person because somebody else wants to put an article about you in the paper. Now, granted, those things help and maybe they're good. It's sometimes good to get um, recognition for the things that you do. But I can tell you how many times in my life I've done the best job out of anybody and somebody else won the award,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I said this example in many, many years, but it just hit me. Uh, my 11th grade year in high school. So uh, that's 11th grade. I was not a freshman and I was not varsity. I was a swimmer. I was on the JV team, junior varsity team. I
Hmm.
won every single meet, every single event of every single meet. Now I wasn't going against the varsity guys, so I was just going against the junior varsity guys. But I was also going against one or two people in my own team.
Hmm.
I won every single event of every single meet. And guess what? I did not win most valuable JV swimmer.
Wow.
And I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed because here I was working to show how valuable I was. And I won every single race. And I'm sitting there going, why the hell didn't I get the award? Now, if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, wait a second, aren't you swimming super hard? And aren't you trying to win because that's what you want? Are you doing it because you're trying to hope other people think that you're great? Because if you're doing it for them, trust me, in the end, you put all this time in, they didn't think you were the greatest, even though you were, right?
Mm,
So I think that it's so important to learn, and it took me a long time to learn this, but it really doesn't matter what other people think more than the person that's in the mirror. That's for sure.
mm. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do you have any you kind of like left on a really good gem. I always like to say, do you have anything you want to share with the audience
Ah,
finally? But that was such a good gem. But do you have anything else you want them to know?
that's really sweet. And thank you. I would say one thing I learned recently that I could share, that I think is important, especially in relation to all the things that we've already talked about, is that somebody told me they're very experienced and educated. They said that the human brain is wired to, when it comes to our past experiences, it's wired to pull away from the good things about us because we tend to see that as a third person, like that's a movie that we're watching. And in the past, when it's a negative, we kind of lean in, like we experienced, like that story I just told you about not getting the award for. I could see that,
Hmm.
but I didn't talk about all the races I won and how great I was, right? Because that was I see that as somebody else. So I would say that to the extent possible, you should lean into the positives, right? Lean into the good things about you and focus on those positives. Roger Federer, famous tennis player. I remember reading a quote from him like 20 years ago, and they asked him, "Hey, you don't train on your weaknesses. You train on your strengths. Why do you do that?" And he goes, "Are you kidding me? No matter how hard I work on my weak things, there's going to be somebody that's going to beat me at it. But the things that I do well, if I do them really, really, really well, nobody could come close to me." And I'm like, ah, oh, that makes sense, man. So instead of focusing on our negatives, let's focus on our positives, right? And so if we could do that about ourselves, then that allows us to probably be more authentic.
Yeah. Powerful words. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
sure.
So how can people connect with you? Where can they find you to shower you with
Sure.
love? With love.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So all the proceeds from the book are going to support the cancer organizations that were picked by the book participants. So uh, organizations like American Cancer Society, Moffitt Cancer Center, Children's Hospital LA. There's a bunch more. They're on my website. It's cycleoflives.org.
Mm-hmm.
The book is sold wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever. Audible is coming out soon. But it's Kindle or hard copy. You can buy it from me or buy it from the you know from wherever you buy books, and whatever would come to me goes right out to those organizations. So that's how they could support. And if you like the book, as you know, reviews matter. So if you think that the messages in the book and the stories are moving and inspiring and cause you to be better equipped to have hard conversations, then tell other people about it.
Great. Thank you so much. And we're going to put all that information for you guys in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, David. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Bianca. I've really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you.
If you connected with what you just heard, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can stay connected by following the Instagram Bianca Keisha, spelled Keisha, Kesha, or visiting the website authenticwednesday.com. Remember, authenticity is a journey, not a destination.